Hey y'all, welcome to week 2 of the Every Bit Counts Challenge. It's hosted by Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead. She's challenging us to preserve something every day in the month of August. I am doing a lot of canning this week. I've got a lot of stuff coming in from the garden. I've got these Boston butts here that I got to cut up. They were 99 cents a pound, so I got about 8 or 10 of them. I can't remember how many, but I found 3 more, so I've got to do those. I canned some pork in broth, and I also canned some in some barbecue sauce, and I did something wrong and it backfired on me, so I knew it was wrong and I'd never done it before, but I did it and it backfired. So I will explain what I did and I'll tell you what not to do. So I hope you will enjoy following along with what I preserved this week. I will turn you around. Let's get started. Found a great deal for Boston butts for 99 cents a pound, so I'm going to cube some up and can it. I'm also going to make some broth with the scraps, and I'm also going to throw some in the Instant Pot and make some barbecue, and I'm going to freeze that as well. I've got all this meat that has a lot of fat on there and it's hard to cut off, so I'm going to put this in the Instant Pot. I've got some frozen organic chicken broth that I found in the freezer, that way I can use that up. So I'm just going to cook that for a couple of hours. I have got some onion powder, garlic powder, salt and pepper in there. So I'm just going to put the lid on there and let it cook. I did cook it for an hour and it wasn't quite done, so I let it go ahead and go for 2 hours. First thing I'm going to can is some pork in chicken broth. I'm just going to brown the chunks in just a little bit of oil. I'm using avocado oil. I'm going to heat up some organic chicken broth and I'm going to pour that over the hot pork. That way I can make anything with this pork. If you can it with barbecue sauce, you just have to have barbecue sauce. So what I'm going to do is just brown it and can it in the broth. I'm going to roast the bones and the fat, and I can can at least a couple jars of some bone broth. Just cover that with water and put some salt and pepper and spices in there, and that way I can get some of the meat out of this as well. I'm going to add a half a tablespoon because I am canning in pint jars, and I will add the hot pork in there and pour that hot boiling broth over the top. Alright, I'm going to take all the air bubbles out, make sure it's at 1-inch headspace, put my lid and my ring on, and I'll put it in the canner and we'll fill up all the jars. Okay, I'm going to process these for an hour and 15 minutes. This is going to be great to have on my shelf. I could use this for carnitas, I could use it for burritos, for chilies, I could even top it on pizza. And I cannot wait to have this on my shelf. And I got 16 jars, so I am going to have a stock pantry of pork for sure. Alright, this has cooked overnight and it just looks and smells amazing. And I got all those bones cooked. I just put them over, just put water on them and put some salt and pepper, onion powder and garlic powder, of course. And now I'm going to make this as broth. So I'm just going to strain it and put it in the fridge and let that fat come to the top, and then I'll go through this and get all the meat out of all the bones and the fat. So I'm just going to try and get as much of that just white fat as I can, because you can fry potatoes with that, you can fry all kinds of stuff in it just like you could bacon fat or even Crisco. Just bring this to a boil and can it for 20 minutes in a pressure canner. Alright, I got 3 jars out of it, and you can use this for soup, stews, and you can use it in place of beef broth or chicken broth. And it's not too bad considering this is what most people would just throw away. Now you've got 3 jars of broth. This is going to be barbecue pulled pork. I've got 1.5 cups of onion, 1.5 cups of ketchup, half a cup of firmly packed brown sugar, 1/4 of a cup of apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons brown mustard, 2 tablespoons Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons honey. And I'm also going to double the recipe. Alright, add your pork to it. I'm adding 2 Boston butts that I cut up, and I'm going to mix it with the sauce, and I'm going to bring it to a boil. You want to do this slowly because you do not want this to burn with all that sugar in there and the honey. Alright, I have brought this to a boil and simmered it in the sauce for 5 minutes, and now it's time to can. I've got my hot jars here. I'm going to fill the jars full with the pork. Check the headspace. I'm at 1-inch headspace, fingertip tight. And I'll add that to the simmering water with my hot jars. I'll get another hot jar, and when I get everything filled up, we'll come back. So I'm going to go ahead and process these for an hour and 15 minutes. All right, yeah, here's what went wrong. You're supposed to watch your canner the whole time, and I didn't. I had to go outside a couple times, and I just took for granted that it was going to be like every single time and everything went smoothly. Well, it did not go smoothly, because when I looked at the timer, it was almost time, but the timer, or the weight, just stopped working, and I don't know what happened. It was still on the stove, it was still on the burner, but all of a sudden it's just stopped. And I don't know if it just stopped a couple times during that process because I was outside. So this was absolutely under process. So what you have to do is I went ahead and let it come down to pressure, and then I took my jars out, but you only have 2 hours because it was not processed correctly. So you only have 2 hours, just like you would any cooked items that you have on your table. After you're done, you have to put it in the refrigerator. So I had to put all these in the refrigerator because they were not properly processed. So I will definitely have to freeze these. They are not shelf stable, but I have learned my lesson. So please, if you don't go by the recipe exactly and something goes wrong, you need to refrigerate it. Now, if it was just it didn't seal, that would be fine. You could leave that for 12 to 24 hours before you have to reprocess it. But this is different. It was under process, so it has to go in the fridge within 2 hours. So don't do what I did, but I'm going to go ahead and freeze this. I put one of the jars of barbecue in that deli container, and I'll freeze it that way. But these I'm going to put in a food saver bag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour that barbecue in the food saver bag, and then I'll just sit them upright in my freezer until they're totally frozen, and then I can seal them, and that liquid won't come in and ruin my seal. So I'm just going to pour them in a bag and just let them sit upright until they're totally frozen, and it'll probably be one day before I can get to it. So I'll come back and I'll show you how I freeze them. All right, I've got this one and it's totally frozen, so now I can just seal it, and I'll have that in my freezer, and I'll have barbecue. And this was some of that barbecue that I had in the Instant Pot. I just set that on a tray, and then I broke it into pieces, and now I'm going to freeze that too. Okay, not only do I have that pork that's canned, I also got this pork that I'm going to put in the freezer. I've got some of that cooked pork that I had in the Instant Pot, and I've also got some of those cubes that had the barbecue sauce on them. They're not cooked, but I can just throw those in the Instant Pot. And I can also put this other barbecue in the crock pot and let that cook all day. And I've got lots of convenience food that I can just thaw out, or I can just put it straight in my Instant Pot or my crock pot. Found a good deal on some meat, so I made some hamburger patties, and I put them on a sheet tray and froze them, and now I'm putting them in food saver bags, and I just got some parchment paper in there to keep them separated. I like to keep these out, especially if you just want a couple hamburgers. They're nice to have on hand. And I'm going to make a meatloaf and some meatballs to have on hand. I'm going to make the meatloaf for dinner, and we're going to have that for dinner, and then we're going to make up some meatballs for some easy and quick dinners, like spaghetti and meatballs, or maybe a sub sandwich. So I've just got some breadcrumbs there, some red pepper cut up, an onion, and I've got salt and pepper and onion powder, and I'll have that recipe linked down below in the description box. That is the best meatloaf ever. And I did add an egg too. But I'm just going to I'm going to form these meatballs. I think this is the most tedious thing you can do in the kitchen, is make meatballs. But I'm going to go ahead and roll these out, and then I'll brown them in a frying pan, and then we'll freeze them. But I saw that America's Test Kitchen said that they taste really good if you just drop them into the marinara sauce too. So I'll definitely have to try that. So I'm going to go ahead and fry these in some avocado oil. You could also just freeze them like that. You don't have to fry them, but I'm just going to fry them. That'll just save me another step. Well, that was everything that I had preserved this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just let me know down below in the description box. I'll try to share with you all the recipes that I used, and I hope y'all have a wonderful week. I'll see y'all in the next video.